welcome or welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle. Now, this is the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, the pilot, and then we use it to decide if we should watch the entire series. Thank you so much to everybody who has already subscribed and followed wherever they listen to their podcasts. If you haven't already done so, I would appreciate if you did. On this episode of The Pilot Principle, we are chatting episode 1 of the new Disney+, arguably, I think we could call it a historical drama. So let's do that. We're talking about episode 1 of the new Disney+ historical drama series, 1,000 Blows. Two Jamaican friends arrive in London and become caught up in the East End's criminal underground. I know I say this every episode, but if there's one thing to know about me, I am an escapist whore. So yes, I love a bit of a period drama, me. Send me back to anywhere that is not here. Not physically, because I don't feel like I'll do well in this period of time in history, but I'd happily watch it from, my time right here in the present day. I will admit to being curious about 1,000 Blows based on its association with Peaky Blinders, but not really that much. I mean, I liked the Peaky Blinders, but I don't, worship at the altar of Tommy Shelby. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't help in at least piquing my interest about this show. And I think it's good to note that another reason I wanted to watch this show is because it looked different. And I know, despite how many similar dark detective whodunit thrillers I consume, I actually like when shows are a little bit outside the box and they're not exactly like something else that I've seen recently before. So yeah, those are all the reasons that I chose to watch 1,000 Blows. And I always think it's important to talk about why I chose to watch something, because we all have such individualistic tastes and things that draw us in. And sometimes it's hard to filter out the noise of adverts and A-list casts. So sometimes, let's stop and think about why we've chosen to press play on a show, because there are so many shows to choose from. I can't decide if that was a lecture or unsolicited advice, but either way, let's move on to talking about the credits. So the pilot synopsis tells us Hezekiah and Alec arrive in London to make their fortunes and meet the alluring criminal Mary Carr. The pilot is 56 minutes and there are 6 episodes in this series. The series was created by Stephen Knight, who also wrote the pilot episode. Stephen Knight, of course, created and wrote for Peaky Blinders. He also worked on / created the series Taboo and the series SAS Rogue Heroes. And Knight also wrote the feature films Spencer and Maria. He also randomly created the series Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I had no idea about this, and I thought I would share this piece of knowledge because I doubt many people would, pin the same person who did Peaky Blinders as the same person who created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. We have a director duo for the pilot episode. So firstly, we have Tinge Krishnan, and Krishnan has directed Dimensions, episodes of Temple, and Been So Long. Directing alongside Krishnan is Nick Murphy, and Murphy has directed a plethora of random episodes of things, including A Spy Among Friends, Save Me, and The Last Kingdom. Whoop whoop. I love The Last Kingdom. Definitely go and watch that if you're into the whole Vikings and like really, really good, rich story. It should be available on Netflix. Oh, before I move on to cast, quickly to add, Tinge Krishnan was a whole ass doctor before they segued into filmmaking with a BAFTA-winning short. And the moral of that story for me is that maybe I should go to med school. Right, okay, let's talk cast. And firstly, we have Malachi Kirby, who plays Hezekiah Moscow. And Kirby has been all over our TV screens, both in the UK and the US. He has starred in Roots, Curfew, Devils, and Mangrove, which was part of the Steve McQueen Small Axe anthology. Next, we have Erin Doherty, who plays Mary Carr. And Doherty has starred in The Crown, Les Mis, the miniseries, not the West End musical. And she has starred in the film Firebrand, which I switched off after 30 minutes. Next, we have Francis Lovell as Alec, and Lovell has starred in Lovers Rock, which was also part of the Small Axe anthology. He's also starred in Champion and Masters of the Air. And finally, on the selected cast list, we have Stephen Graham as Sugar Goodson. And Graham is not an unfamiliar name on the pod. I have reviewed pilot episodes of a few shows he has starred in recently, including Boiling Point and Bodies. However, Graham has also starred in Venom: The Last Dance and most recently, Steve McQueen's Blitz. I know, it's a whole Steve McQueen thing going on, isn't it? Did I tell you that I wrote a non-fiction book that charts the works of Steve McQueen? From his time as a Turner Prize winning visual artist to award-winning filmmaker. Probably not, because I just don't say things about myself. But if you're interested, it is called In the Scene, Steve McQueen, and you can buy it on Amazon. The pilot also stars James Nelson Joyce, Jason Tobin, and Hannah Walters. And the last thing to add before we get into the show itself is that 1,000 Blows is in fact inspired by real events and real people. If you're wondering, the difference between based on and inspired by is that it's harder to be sued if you say it's inspired by than based on. Hopefully I have sufficiently whetted your appetites to get into talking about the first 10 minutes of 1,000 Blows. And if you're wondering, really quickly, we talk about the first 10 minutes for two reasons. Firstly, because it should set the tone and convince us to watch the entire episode. And secondly, because I like comparing it with the end of episode hook to see if everything ends up adding up together in a really satisfying way. And the first 10 minutes goes like this. A woman is giving birth on the street with a bunch of onlookers, including Hezekiah and Alec, who have just arrived from Jamaica. Hezekiah soon realises that perhaps things are not quite as they seem, because while this woman, Mary, looks like a baby is about to slide out of her hoo-ha, various other cloaked women are sliding their hands in and out of people's pockets. When Alec tries to interfere, Hezekiah stops him and makes this interesting observation about London. This is how the river runs. If you don't have it, you take it. So let's take it. Once the whole baby hoo-ha show is over, Hezekiah and Alec continue on their merry way, and we learn three things. Hezekiah has been offered a job as a lion tamer. The boys have 5 shillings to their name and they have nowhere to live. Unfortunately, being black makes their search for lodgings difficult, bordering on impossible. One fellow who turns them away from his boarding house tells them, "I get it, I'm Irish." Yeah, we then go to the fake baby having pickpocketing women who share their hoard while the boss, Mary, hints at a big job on the horizon. And she says, "Anyone can steal from the bottom, it's time we steal from the top." And with that prophetic line, the women part ways, and that is the 10-minute mark. And you know what? As an intro, that was rather fun. I really enjoyed those women. They're so businesslike. They see what they want, they slide their hands into people's pockets and they take it. Good for them. Also, I liked that we get a taste for the London that we are going to be exposed to. It's filled with criminals and very, very dirty. Guys, you know how I feel about about shows where people don't ever wash. And this is another one of those unwashed shows. So yeah, bear that in mind if that's also a thing that you feel strongly about. I will also say from the first 10 minutes that I do feel a bit lost in time. I have no idea what year it is. People are wearing petticoats and, you know, people are pickpocketing and I don't know, I want to say Victorian London? Turn of the century, 1900s, but I just made that up. Yeah, that's the one thing I would say about the opening 10 minutes. Also, I will say that it was a little cheesy with those thematic summaries from Hezekiah's line about this is the way the river runs, if you don't have it, take it, to Mary's line about how it's time we steal from the top. I was like, okay, thank you for explaining the entire theme of the series to me. It looks like we are ready to talk character, and there are 2 characters to talk about in this pilot episode. Firstly, Hezekiah Moscow, and it's important to firstly say that that is a sick name. Hezekiah Moscow? I love it. It's funny because a writer friend and I were talking about character names, and I said I don't like when a character's name is too distracting. However, what I don't mind is when a character's name has pizzazz, and Hezekiah Moscow has pizzazz. Now, Hezekiah is new and hopeful and sort of lifts Alec's spirits because Alec is not happy to be in London at all. He is not happy to have gotten on that boat from Jamaica with his crazy buddy Hezekiah. But, you know, Hezekiah is trying to keep his spirits up and he manages to find them someplace to live. And I like that Hezekiah is a layered character. We learn in the pilot episode that he speaks Mandarin. Never would have thought it. Neither did the Chinese man who he speaks Mandarin to. However, despite how upbeat and positive and lovable Hezekiah comes across, according to Alec, he attracts trouble. However, when Alec says this, yes, they are talking to a criminal, but Alec is also a bit muddy because he has just lost a boxing match. Now, I think what Hezekiah wants is a new life and to escape his past. We do get flashes of a horrible experience that presumably took place in Jamaica before he left. So I think that Hezekiah is definitely running from something dark despite the pretense of putting on a happy face. Hezekiah also really wants to live out his dream of being a lion tamer. It comes up a few times in the pilot episode and he talks about it as a dream he has had since he was a little boy. Which is sweet, you know, follow your dreams, reach for the stars and all of those other S Club 7 lyrics. Over the course of the pilot episode, it's quite cool because, Hezekiah came to London with 5 shillings to his name and we watch those 5 shillings very slowly but also very quickly dwindle. So I really like that as a subtle point of contention as we see it start to affect Hezekiah as well. When he's got 5 shillings, he's like, it's cool, let's go. We can do anything. The world is our oyster. He's got 4 shillings and he's like, all right, it's cool. We can just bet someone a boxing match, Alec. It's great. He's got 2 shillings left and then we watch as he's like, shit. This is all I've got left and I haven't even been in London 48 hours. And then he's got 1 shilling left. And by the time he has 1 shilling left, he is a completely different man. And at that point of only having 1 shilling left, we have seen his spirit crushed and it's sad. We do feel bad for Hezekiah. And personally, as a Londoner, I get it, you know? You can't afford housing. There are no decent jobs. And despite how hopeful you try to be, everyone is just a little bit racist. Now, my prediction over the course of the series for Hezekiah is that, in the pilot episode, we see him lose his cheeky, hopeful spring in his step, kind of like a Labrador. He's got Labrador vibes. Yeah, he's like a Labrador. But he's now a sad Labrador at the end of the pilot episode. And so I think over the course of the series, we will hopefully see him get a spring back in his step and hopefully be the optimistic chap we see at the beginning of the pilot episode. Our second character we are introduced to is Mary Carr. And Mary Carr is a bad bitch, which for me is pretty much the highest form of praise. She is the leader of the 40 Elephants, which is the only female London gang or something like that. I've never wanted to join a gang, but I'm not going to lie, those 40 Elephants looked incredibly alluring, except for the whole, questionably Victorian era London where everybody is a little bit unwashed. I love that Mary Carr sees gender inequality and she spits in its eye. She is a woman with ambition and she isn't going to let anybody get in her way. What we know about Mary Carr is that she has got a heist of some sort planned. If you remember, at the end of the first 10 minutes, she says, anyone can steal from the bottom. It's time we steal from the top. And when she said the top, this bad bitch meant the tippity top. She plans to steal from the Queen of England. Again, Queen Victoria? Question mark? Now, Mary's only weakness, however, is her lover, a man with a gambling problem and an inflated sense of self because he is a man. And he says, after stealing Mary's own money from her and thinking that she wouldn't know, even though your heart is black, you're the woman for me. Somebody ring the church bells. Now, over the course of the pilot episode, we watch Mary throw out the trash, aka her lover, and we see her become intrigued by the new guy in town, aka Hezekiah Moscow. She tries to steal from him because, tigers and stripes, but he quickly clocks her and then they have a moment and it's not quite sizzling, but I don't know, I felt the air get warm, I felt the possibilities stirring between the two of them. Now, over the course of the series, I think, inevitably, Hezekiah will become tangled up in Mary's plans. Let's just say that the whole Mandarin speaking thing will likely come up. It's quite cool the way the pilot episode was filmed because we see Hezekiah and Mary cross paths before they eventually meet at a boxing match. And that's the boxing match that Hezekiah convinces Alec to take part in, and then Alec loses. And it's also funny because Hezekiah and Mary both have similar philosophies about how we each make our own luck/fortune. Both characters allude to it in some way, shape or form in the pilot episode. So fate pushing these two characters together is a nice bit of irony. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what my film and TV life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. And as per usual, we start with books, and I am reading The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. And I should apologise now because I'm basically going to be saying this for the next few episodes because it's a big ass book, okay, and I'm taking my sweet time with it. There's a lot of world building involved, okay, so yes, for the foreseeable future I will be reading The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. Moving over to film, and the 3 movies I watched all on Mubi. I recently got a subscription and I have been thoroughly enjoying it. So firstly, I watched The Worst Person in the World, and this is a Nordic drama about a woman in her 20s to 30s just trying to figure out her life. And it was okay. I didn't love the character, but eventually she grew on me, and it was divided up into 12 chapters plus a prologue and an epilogue, and I really enjoyed that structural format. Next, I watched La Camera or La Chimera, not quite sure where to put the emphasis, but this is an Italian movie and it stars, I want to say Josh O'Connor, the dark-haired dude from Challengers. So it stars him, and he can sense where there is buried treasure in Italy. And I wish I liked this movie more, but it was just a bit too vague for me. It's one of those movies where I feel like it's got a bit of magical realism in it, and I feel like I wanted to understand what I was watching, and I could have done so if they had given me just a little bit more. And after I read the movie description, I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't get that. Didn't get that at all. And the final movie that I watched was Frances Ha. And this is a movie that stars Greta Gerwig. It's in black and white. It came out in 2012. And once again, it stars, or I should say it's about a woman in her late 20s as she comes to a fork in the road in her friendship with her very best friend, Sophie. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Yes, it borders on pretension, but ultimately it did worm its way in and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So let's move over to TV land, where I am very pleased to say I have finished watching Dark. Now, I mentioned Dark on the last episode, and this is a 3-series German language Netflix series about time travel and how lives are interconnected within certain families in a small German town. Ooh, my head hurts. I've been playing mental gymnastics with the family tree for about 3 days now. And yeah, it was really worth it. I think the 3rd season went off in a weird direction, but it be that way sometime. Also, because I love tying people together, the main character in Dark, I can't remember what the actor's name is because I haven't looked it up, but he stars in All the Light We Cannot See, which was written and directed by Stephen Knight. So yeah, it's all connected. We're basically living Dark. Right, now Dark is finished. I actually just don't know what's next. I think I'm going to take a bit of a pause and look at my options, because Lord knows I've got options. I know I mentioned that I need to finish Miss Austen. I need to catch up with Paradise. Valeria season 4 is out. And on top of all of that, I now would like to watch 1899, which is another mind bender from the makers of Dark. And my sister has been talking about a Korean drama called The Trunk. So that's also on my list. If you have any suggestions in which direction I should go, then of course I want to hear it. I also want to know whatever else it is that you are watching and reading, and you can chat to me over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle. And if you are interested in any of my film reviews, then make sure to check out justjensreviews.com or follow me on Letterboxd, justjen02. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Let's get back into talking about 1,000 Blows. I have given you a lot of information about what has been going on in the pilot episode based on the characters' perspectives and the opening 10 minutes. But let's iron out some details. So we have firstly the main story arc, the A plot, and this is about Hezekiah's new life in London and all that this entails. Then our second story arc, the B plot, is about Mary and her 40 elephants and their plan to steal from the Queen of England. In terms of the third story arc and the C plot, do you know what? I'm not sure what that would be. I mean, it's possible there isn't one, or it hasn't yet been introduced, because sometimes that happens. They don't introduce the C plot until after the pilot episode, especially if there's a lot going on. And to be honest, some pilots could stand to follow that rule. But I will say, if I had to, goose or guess a gander, it would be something to do with Sugar Goodson. And don't worry, we will get to who they are momentarily, because we are now going to fast forward over to the end of episode Hook. So Hezekiah heads to the zoo to start work, but it turns out that they don't want him to be a animal trainer or a lion tamer. They want to put him in a cage for entertainment. Yeah, let that sit with you, that this used to be a thing that they actually did in this very London. Realising that his lifelong dream of becoming a lion tamer can no longer be a reality, Hezekiah leaves crushed. We also learn at the end of the episode Mary's plans to steal from Queen Victoria. And because of the intricacies of the plan, which I won't go into, she needs her landlord's help to translate some documents. However, he refuses, and so now Mary is in a bit of a pickle. In the very last scene, we are back at the boxing ring and we meet the man, the myth, the East London gladiator, Henry Sugar Goodson. And Sugar is a scary, jacked up beast of a boxer. We see him absolutely destroy a man in the ring without breaking a sweat or a smile. And he is a completely different boxer to the boxer Alec faced earlier in the episode. He's that guy, And his next opponent is a man without a shilling left to his name, and that is Hezekiah the Lion Moscow. And that is where the episode ends, as these two square each other up in the ring. And you know what? That's my East London coming out there. I would say that compared to the opening 10 minutes, the ending is pretty well deserved. I think a lot of the episode hinges on Hezekiah's character. And so compared to this positive human we meet at the start, by the end, I basically want to cry for him. He called himself the Lion because he'd never be a lion tamer. I'm sorry. That is so sad. Which is great. Because it shows that they have made me care about the main character, and I am in fact invested in his story, which I hope ends up being really positive, because poor guy, he's got but a shilling left to his name. Now, I would say that I have been relatively objective, as I have been giving you a outline summary of the pilot episode and its principal characters. Yes, with some colourful narration, but now here are some of my personal thoughts. So firstly, I think as a series prediction, yes, we end on a cliffhanger of Sugar versus Moscow. And I think that Moscow will win. And then the series will build towards a rematch as Sugar tries to reclaim his title. Or perhaps the other way around, but I think some sort of reclamation of title is definitely going to be a key plot point throughout the series. I also think Mary's plan is more than she is letting on, because she's supposed to be stealing a few state welcome gifts from the Queen, but I don't know. She seems like the kind of person to me that has layers and depths to her plans, and yeah, I think she's got something else up her sleeve. I also don't think she'll succeed in her plan to rob the Queen, and that's probably because of her idiot ex-lover, but what do I know? Yes, this is inspired by real characters, but I haven't read up on them, and we definitely didn't learn about these people in GCSE history. Now, in terms of what I liked about the pilot episode, I think the costume was great. They really made these people look like they needed a bath. I also think that the cinematography was really good, and I think they did a really good job in emotionally tying us to the main character, Hezekiah Moscow. I think the mise-en-scène as well overall was done really well. We get the sense of Victorian London as this gritty cesspool, and I grew up in East London and it hasn't changed, so that's incredibly comforting. Now, in terms of what I didn't so much like about the pilot episode, I would say that it flailed in the middle. I did kind of lose focus as characters kind of just went from A to B with minimal purpose. As in, when they were performing certain actions, I didn't understand how it was really pushing the plot forward. And so I'm not sure if it's a structure thing or a plot thing, but they 100% could have tightened and dropped a few scenes, which would have helped with pacing and, helped, I think, with the middle so that it was as engaging as the start and the end of the episode. Okay, now that we've finished talking about what I think, I would say that for you, if you like historical dramas that aren't too ye or yay, you like it when they're a bit more authentic, down to earth, gritty, we've all got like working class accents, then that was my version of a Victorian East End Londoner there. So if you like those, and if you like shows with multiple things going on to keep you interested, because I think Hezekiah's boxing journey, Mary's heist, and the side quest of all the other characters could sustain you. And finally, it's also pretty light. I feel like you could watch this with kids. But, please check the age restrictions, because I was watching all sorts before I was 10, so what do I know? So if all of that sounds appealing to you, then yeah, go for it. Take a goose and a gander at 1,000 Blows. On the flippity flip side, I want to say that if you're expecting to have back-to-back violent boxing matches, then you will be incredibly disappointed. Yep. If you were expecting Peaky Blinders in Victorian London, you will also be pretty disappointed. I know that this never claimed to be Peaky Blinders, but I think the advertising went so hard on from the makers of Peaky Blinders. And, boxing is supposed to be a principal factor of the series. And we don't get too much of it, to be honest, in the pilot episode. But there is some. Maybe I'm being unfair. We do get a good amount. But the pilot episode is setting up what's to come. And we get a decent boxing match in the middle. And, okay, a pretty brutal one at the end. But it's not, so far at least, the only thing that's going on. So yes, if you're just expecting back to back, punch, blood, then yeah, this ain't it, honey. Goodness, I guess the only thing left for me to do now is to give the pilot episode a pilot score. Do you know what? I think I'm going to go with 3 out of 5. Yeah, I think we get a great sense of character and setting and a nice tease of what to expect from the series. And it had heart. I thought it was good. It was enjoyable. Not much above average, but good. It doesn't make you think of Peaky Blinders at all. And again, I only keep mentioning that because the advertising kept mentioning that. I would say that 1,000 Blows is more like Dodger, the Disney+ series that came out, I want to say last year. It's more like Dodger meets something like set in London, like Victorian London, like Oliver Twist. Yes, I see what I did there. And no, I'm not taking it back. Thanks for joining me this week. Let me know what you thought of the pilot episode of 1,000 Blows. Has this episode convinced you to start watching? Has it convinced you to continue watching? Or has it convinced you to stop watching? Holler at me over on Instagram and Twitter at Pilot Principle. Don't forget to follow if you're not already following, share if you haven't already shared, and rate if you haven't already rated. And I will catch you on the next episode.